Good evening and welcome to the Cabinet meeting of the 1st of October. Thank you all for joining us tonight, both here and online. Before we move into the formal agenda, I wanted to pick up a couple of items. Firstly, a big welcome, an international welcome to our guest here, the Deputy Mayor, Mayor Pushpa of I'm going to pronounce it wrong, apologies, the Diamua municipality, and namaste to you. And I hope you have a great visit, and I hope tonight's meeting is helpful to show democracy here happening live and in person. So you're very, very welcome. It's great to see you here. The other item I wanted to pick up before we move into the formal agenda, colleagues will be aware that yesterday was the deadline for all principal authorities to make their expression of interest on the issue of devolution. I'm pleased to say, as you would expect, we, of course, have fully adhered to that deadline. Our submission has gone in. We've made it clear in a supporting letter, because the expression of interest was effectively just 3 pretty straightforward questions, that for the 2 million people who live in the wider region, our region of Medway alongside the region of Kent, we think that the opportunities of devolution are very interesting. It's great to see the Deputy Prime Minister reaching out to councils like ours to hear from us firsthand. Of course, we have placed on record since the start of this administration some of our concerns around a potential mayoralty. Of course, we're moving into a new phase with the legislation coming forward, so we look forward to seeing the English devolution bill and what that may hold within it, and in particular, the details around the Council of Regions and Nations. I want to make sure that our communities across both Medway and wider Medway and Kent make sure that their voice is heard around that table. So we look forward to continuing that conversation with MHCLG, of course, remembering that local government have literally been put back into the name of that government department. And my thanks to officers and the Chief Executive for their work on making sure that we made that deadline effectively and efficiently. I would say as well, our colleagues in Kent also made their submission yesterday. I'm sure they'll talk about that for themselves, and I'll be under no illusion. We want a good working relationship with the districts, the boroughs, the city council, the county council, as well as our partners in the NHS, in the private sector, the voluntary sector and elsewhere. So pleased to update you on that. I don't think we have any apologies for absence, so I'll move on to the record of decision. The colleagues happy for me to sign the record of decision of the 27th of August. Thank you very much. I'll do that at the end of the meeting. Are there any disclosable pecuniary interests or other significant interests? No one is interesting. That is a good thing. Let's move on then to the first substantive item, which is the Medway Youth Justice Plan. I'm going to hand over to Adam.
Thank you, Vince. Yes, colleagues, I'm very pleased to present to you the Medway Youth Justice Plan 2024 to 2025. This has been before scrutiny on the 1st of August, and I'll mention some of their comments shortly. I'm also pleased to confirm to my colleague, Councillor Patterson, that explicit links have been made with the Medway Community Safety Plan, because I think it's very important that we join up these plans, youth justice, community safety, that's a clear link. And obviously the Youth Justice Board is made up of a number of partnerships with the police and other bodies for us to be able to move forward on that. So basically, just to say that the Crime and Disorder Act 1998 requires us to have one of these each year. I'm pleased to assure you that the Youth Justice Plan meets the requirements of the National Youth Justice Board set out in March 2024 guidance. And basically the intentions in common with other authorities in the country, in England, the intentions are to improve the outcomes for vulnerable children and young people involved in the youth justice system within Medway. I can also point out, because you've read it in your papers, that sadly we lost the previous chair of the Medway Youth Justice Board, James Williams, but I'm pleased that Leanne Farrick, our Director of People, has been able to pay tribute to James in her forward to this plan. And obviously James is sorely missed, but it was excellent during his 4 years when he was the chair of the Youth Justice Partnership, that he was able to bring the values of public health into this field of work. So this is the third year where the Youth Justice Board nationally have stipulated the contents of our Youth Justice Plan. And if I move on then to the comments which were came out of the consideration by the Children and Young People's ONS. Basically, members raised several comments and questions, and these included, in relation to young people with additional needs, it was asked how the commissioning of speech and language therapists for young people with additional needs was progressing, and the officer said that this has been discussed at the Youth Justice Board. There is clearly a national shortage of speech and language therapists, and work has been being undertaken with providers to look into innovative solutions. And this was part of the work that the late Director of Public Health started to address these challenges with recruitment. There was a question in relation to funding, and at that time that the officers were still awaiting the confirmation of the final amount, but they'd received confirmation that it would be no less than the previous year. In relation to education and training, members asked what achievements and qualifications could be earned by our young people within the youth justice system. And the officers said that the AQA qualification has been in place for over a year, and basically there's all sorts of opportunities for our children to and young people to be involved in unpaid work in the community to enable them to gain vital work experience, to work in areas of building and construction, music, as well as other areas of interest. And the aim of the AQA qualification is to identify young people's areas of interest and to support them in developing skills that they could utilise in their later life. Questions were asked about data on first-time offenders and how this data is being used to support the work of the team. And we heard that data is regularly collated and shared quarterly at the National Youth Justice Board, and a deep dive has been undertaken on the backgrounds of young people and the types of offences they have committed. But there is more work that needs to be done to be undertaken to fully understand their experience. The officer also detailed work on first-time offenders was a priority for this year. Further details will be provided to the committee. In relation to female offending, it was acknowledged by the officer that there are differences relating to the gender of young people offending, but the important thing is that everybody's treated as an individual, that they're listened to, and obviously in response to their identification and also responding to their appropriate needs. It's important to ensure that they are treated as individuals at all times. Also, questions were asked about the retention of staff, and the yacht team manager was pleased to report how invested management are in the development of staff. As the senior officer, he said he was very proud and lucky to work with an exceptional team, motivated and committed to continuous development. He was proud of the diverse and rich background of the team. So basically, through you, colleagues, I'd like to recommend that we recommend to full council to approve the Medway Youth Justice Plan for 2024 to 2025. Happy to take away any questions. Thank you, Vince.
Thank you very much indeed, Adam. I've got Tracy.
Thank you very much. It's a really comprehensive plan. I was pleased to see that disproportionality is now introduced to the plan, and that we'll be gathering data on those groups which are overrepresented in the youth justice system, whether they be young people from minority ethnic backgrounds, care experienced young people, or young people with SEND. It's really important that we're able to identify them. And I really look forward to seeing how that data is used to help us better target our preventative work so that we're able to stop some of these young people entering the youth justice system in the first place. I think prevention is a really key part of this plan. I'll be very interested to see how this can help us do this better. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tracy. Alex?
Thanks, Vince. Yeah, I just wanted to place on record my appreciation at the joined-up thinking which we are moving forward with in this cabinet. I've been really impressed since joining cabinet, just at the cross-cutting work that we all do, and I think there's a real awareness that each of our individual portfolio briefs cuts across others in ways that sometimes aren't immediately apparent, but certainly the community safety plan which we've brought forward earlier this year, and one of the 4 pillars of that being to reduce reoffending, to tackle that not so much at source, but as early as possible in a potential offender's life, and also to perhaps go further than to prevent reoffending, but as this youth justice plan does, to divert away from offending in the first place has to be the ultimate goal. We've seen the absolute chaos in our criminal justice system, and it's quite clear that we can't lock people up and indefinitely and in such great numbers without a significant investment in both the prison estate and in all of the services which that requires. So I think it's really important that we move upstream, and this youth justice plan is certainly something which I hope will do the job of achieving one of the goals of my community safety plan before people have even got that far.
Thank you very much indeed, Alex, and great to hear those reflections as a still relatively new cabinet member. Look, this is a really important work, and again, it's something which I know that the whole team takes seriously, and it's always good to hear that feedback from overview and scrutiny. I do welcome that. I think they do a good job of looking at these things. So obviously there'll be another opportunity at full council when we take it forward there, but I'll certainly be supporting this when it gets there. Adam, back to you.
Yes, thank you, colleagues, for your support to this plan. It is appreciated. Also, just to point out that we are taking the opportunity because as part of the new system, we're likely to be inspected at some point in relation to our provision. And so work has been going on in the background on that. And the content of this youth justice plan is likely to be used by the inspectors when they're measuring and they come to see us. But I'm very pleased that that my officer colleagues have taken the opportunity to do things like a mock inspection to make sure that we're fully ready for this whenever that may come. But thank you, colleagues. Happy so to move.
Thank you very much indeed. Are colleagues happy to support the recommendation? Thank you very much. That moves us on to the next item, the annual review of School Place Planning Strategy 22 to 27. Tracy, over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to bring forward the annual review of the School Place Planning Strategy 2022 to 2027. It identifies areas of demand for school places, and it makes a number of recommendations to make sure that we fulfil our statutory duty to provide enough school places going forward. These recommendations are set out in section 1 of the report, and that's what Cabinet's been asked to consider this evening. Future forecasting is a complex process, and I'd like to thank officers for their careful and detailed work which has been needed to produce this report. The forecasts in the report are based on the most up-to-date information, including housing developments with planning permission. With the likely continued inward immigration, however, and the progression of the local plan, it's reasonable to assume that demand for places will continue to grow. The past year has seen the opening of a new primary school at Rochester Riverside and the fantastic Maritime Academy at Finsbury. However, there continues to be localised pressure in parts of Medway. I'm extremely grateful to our Medway school colleagues who've been hugely supportive in terms of accepting bulge classes, and some of our schools are now being permanently expanded, and with more feasibility studies taking place to identify where there might be further scope for expansion. The recommendations contained in section 1 of this report gives details of these and other proposals, and so I would ask Cabinet to approve these recommendations so that we're able to meet our statutory duties going forward.
Thank you very much indeed, Tracy. Simon?
Yeah, thanks very much. And thank you, Tracy, and thank you for this report. I mean, it's a crucial piece of information that's provided here in how we plan ahead with our school placements. And I just wanted to reflect on the mention of the local plan here. The adoption of the local plan, all things being equal, will be 2027 when we go through with the process. That's the current timetable for it, and that will provide the certainty of where and how and what kind of developments will be taking place in Medway up to 2041. And then obviously it makes it a lot easier to plan our school places when we have that certainty of the local plan. So the two documents, this one and the local plan, will be able to work in parallel with each other going forward over many years to come, and provide a much greater surety as to what our education needs are going to be going forward and the places that will be required. So this is really welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Simon. Teresa?
Thank you, Tracy, for the work that you've done on this, and my thanks to everyone in our school communities who have been flexible and innovative in helping us to find the places. Simon, you often talk about our forever policies, and this is one of them, isn't it? And there will be people around this table who will remember when we didn't have a forever policy, and there was a knee-jerk reaction towards closing schools when the demographics showed the difference. This kind of planning will prevent that happening again in Medway, and I think the future looks bright for all of our children and young people here. They're going to be assured of a school place, and they're going to be assured, therefore, of a good future. And as you've said, Simon, the fact that this is happening at the same time as the local plan is very welcome, because we can make sure that, talking about the joined-up thinking, Alex, that you referred to earlier, that those things work in tandem, and they're actually woven into the local plan to give people assurance that with our new communities, our growing community that's here and moving around and lasting longer and growing up along with us, we'll be able to be assured of a good education. So I think this is a great piece of work, actually, and I pay tribute to everyone that's been involved in it.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Alex and Adam?
Thanks, Vince. You know, just to pick up the baton a little bit from Teresa there, you know, there's some of us who can see in a very real way how long-term this planning has to be. Just a couple of weeks ago, I dropped off at university my youngest, who was someone who would have been denied a place at the school that his sister attended had the previous administration's plan to close 3 good schools in Medway been allowed to come to pass. And as it happened, we managed to avoid that outcome for both St Peter's Infants and St John's Infants in Chatham. But Ridge Meadow Primary was not so lucky, and I think, you know, that this underlines the need for that long-term thinking. It was really clear to us back in 2009 we were entering a very challenging period for the country economically, and there are certain demographic trends which follow hard times, and strangely, perhaps perversely, that also, you know, in times of recession, it tends to have a rising birth rate. So it was quite clear that even a short-term blip on the school rolls at those schools was only just that, and that any sort of long-sighted policy would require those places to be retained. So it doesn't surprise me that we find ourselves where we have, and it's really important that we always retain that clear-headedness about the road ahead, and that we don't just plan for next week or next month or next year, but for decades ahead, and for the children who are yet to attend infant school, who in 15 years' time will, like me, be being dropped off by their parents at university.
Thank you very much indeed, Alex. Adam, please.
Yes, thank you. And I'd like to thank my colleague, Councillor Tracy Coombs, for bringing this report tonight before us. and also for pointing out the expansion in mainstream school places. I was also pleased to note that there are plans such as like relocating the Inspire Free School from its current restricted site in Wayfield to Cornwallis Avenue in Gillingham, and that's going to provide 160 places for pupils with social and emotional mental health needs and also autism. And that's being funded through the Department for Education's Free School Programme, with the Council contributing to this. And also, I'm pleased also to see that the programme is going to aim to reduce the need to place children and young people in out-of-area placements. I think that's really important for their quality of life and for the quality of life of their families. It will support pupils in remaining close to their family and friends as much as is possible, to enable local transport. And in terms of transport, I'd like to pay tribute to my colleague Councillor Patterson for his stated ambition to work alongside our children and families as much as possible to be able to walk to school, because that clearly is going to equip them for later life socially in their employment and also for their education, but recognising that that's not always possible. And so, colleagues, I'd like to thank colleagues for the work which they do on the school transport appeals, making sure that we do make that provision where it's absolutely necessary. Thank you, Vince.
Thank you very much. I can't see any other colleagues, so before I go back to Tracy, I mean, I think, as others have said, this is a really important report, and it's about ensuring that we've got the right provision in the right places as well. This is not about just a generic figure for each year group across Medway. It's about recognising there are some specific pressures. And some of those pressures come from a really good reason. You know, if you look at paragraph 1215, you know, there are some bulge classes at the moment in Gillingham because our hospital has been recruiting, you know, additional people to come and work here to deliver those health services that we value and appreciate. You know, there's no doubt they got the freedom of the borough for a reason. So absolutely recognising this is not just about Medway's pan, if you can call it that. This is about very specifically about different areas at different times and the specific challenges that are there. So this is a detailed report, but a very good report. It is right, I think, to recognise that if decisions had been made that a number of us, I've still got the T-shirt at home, literally, about St John's, which I went from a councillor to a chair of governors, because I love that place. It's now no longer in my ward, and I know Harinder and the team in Fort Pitt are looking after it well. But yeah, if we'd taken out another 2 infant schools, think of how much more difficult this report could have been. So, Tracy, through you, thanks to all the officers, particular credit to Paul Clark. I know he does amazing work on this. He is a great officer, and we're very lucky to have him as part of the Medway team. And the final thing I would say is it was a real privilege to be with you and others at the opening of the Maritime Academy. I would encourage anybody, if you get a chance to see that school, go and visit. It's an amazing place. You know, expectations beyond our belief, and quite clearly, young people who are proud to be going to school there. And that's what we want for every young person across Medway. Tracy, back to you.
Thank you very much. As I say, this is a really complex piece of work. Often we will know what future developments are going to be, but as Vince has mentioned, sometimes the inward migration is something that we don't expect. And incredibly supportive colleagues in schools have made sure that those children who have come into Medway where we haven't expected them to have been accommodated in schools locally as far as possible. We really want children to be able to attend their local school in their local community, and this is what this plan helps to make sure will happen in the future. So thank you very much for your support, and I'll hand back to Vince.
Thank you very much indeed, Tracy. Obviously, some of the recommendations are for the report and some are to go to the next full council where we've got capital additions. Are colleagues supportive of the recommendations? Thank you very much. Let's move on then to item 6, Sports Centre Capital Investment. Nina, over to you.
Thank you, Vince. As Cabinet colleagues are all aware, we celebrated on 16th July this year the grand opening of our brand new Cosenton Park Sports Centre, with a range of state-of-the-art sports facilities and highly dedicated staff members providing great customer service. It is proving to be extremely popular. This outstanding sports centre, with its improved energy efficiency measures was not only delivered within timescales, but also well under the budget set aside, amounting to a saving of £1.5 million. This was achieved through close partnership working and monitoring between the council officers, finance team, professional design team, and the contractor Wilmot Dixon from the beginning of the project to its eventual handover. This report seeks Cabinet approval to use that capital savings from the underspend of the allocated budget for Commencement Park to undertake a range of much-needed improvements at our two other sports centres here in Medway, which is at Medway Park Gillingham and Stroud Sports Centre. Our aim is to provide safe and high-class sports facilities, improve customer satisfaction, promote income generation, and thereby help our sports and leisure centres become self-sufficient. Subject to Cabinet recommendation and subsequent full Council approval, the £1.5 million investment will equally be spread across the two sports centres. The report also briefly outlines a plan for improvements at Who Sports Centre and the Strand and how they will be separately funded. By achieving improvements across all of the council-run sports centres, the administration will demonstrate our commitment to improve sports and leisure experiences and promote the health and well-being for our communities across Medway, increase the longevity of our sports and leisure facilities, and be on track to meet our FIT plan objectives to lessen and ultimately remove the annual operational subsidies for Medway Council sports centres. I would like to thank our Senior Officer, Bob Diamond, for this incredibly helpful report for the Cabinet to consider. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Nina. I've got Harinder first, then Teresa.
Yes, thank you, Vince, and thank you, Councillor Gorham, for that. I have to say there's so much in there to celebrate. Not only did the officers make sure that we came under budget, they appointed the most appropriate contractor who produced a fantastic project. It's the I'm not sure if it is the most green project produced under Medway Council, but it may well be. Wouldn't surprise me. There is so much to celebrate that we have a fantastic resource that we're going to have for many, many years to come. And this underspend, and that's what it is an underspend, means that we can now fit out and bring back to life the other sports centres. Now, that is a good news story on one hand, but on the other side, there is the much, there's tougher sentiments to take in. In this report, it's laid out, I think, in 4.7, the idea that we have to basically make sure that these operations are washing their own face, that they are making as much as they're costing to run. And that's a really, really difficult thing to do, and that requires investment. And it also means it highlights sort of the issues that Councillor Patterson raised in the previous item, that this is about not just this year or next year, this is the next decade or 2 decades. Yeah. And it makes me sort of wonder, actually, how did we get here in the first place? And we got there in the first place because one of our sports centres was critically left in a ruinous state, and it meant that we've now had to spend more money to get it back up to the standard that we need it to, and that's why we're here. So I don't want anyone to be thinking that this is money that we're just idly spending on doing up sports centres with a lick of paint. No, this is going to critical infrastructure that the council still own, maintain in a way that other councils do not, and we're doing it for the sake of making sure that we have resources for the long term. So that's an incredibly prudent approach, and I don't want this to be taken in sort of, or looked at in any other way. It's well done for officers, especially Bob Diamond and all the team working under him, that put together a fantastic project that was really well managed, and this is an example of what a council can do when it's run properly. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Harinder. Teresa.
Do you mind turning your mic off? Thank you. No, thank you, Nina and Harinder, because in your previous portfolio, you showed the kind of courage and enthusiasm that was needed to take this project forward in what were difficult circumstances when we took over the council. And I think notwithstanding the doubts that we had, and they were real and serious about the finances, the decision to go ahead was the right one. And Cossington can give us a real lead in inspiration and vision for what we want council buildings to be like. We want the public to be able to enjoy the very best facilities. We want our workforce to enjoy the very best facilities, and our ambitions for Gun Wharf and for other things has to reflect that. This report is no leisure centre left behind, and I think that's incredibly important to say, because the underspend has been, again, we could have done all sorts of things with that, with the financial position that we're in, but this is the right thing to do, because we've got communities across Medway who use the other leisure centres. We've got people who use all of the leisure centres, and they all deserve to have decent facilities. And I can't emphasise enough the folly that you pointed out, Harinder, of not doing refurbishment, of not having a proper depreciation budget. And we absolutely have to ensure now that Cossington and all the other centres have got those in place, that we know what's coming, that we don't wait till they're falling down around our ears and dangerous to the public, as happened with splashes, that we actually put in the work to anticipate what's happening, put the investment in, set aside the kind of budgets that we'll need to keep things going at a good standard, and make that our policy. And I think the other thing that you said, yes, it shows how innovative and creative and ambitious the public sector can be, as much as anybody. And I think, you know, we can swap things around and say, well, look at us. You know, this is the kind of facility that everybody can aspire to, and we want the others to catch up as well.
Thank you very much, Teresa. I've got Luella, Simon, then Alex.
Thanks, Vince. In agreement with my colleagues here, that I think it's a really good thing to see that the savings made from Cossington are going to be used to bring up our other sports centres, and as Harry said, not just the liquor paint, proper infrastructure that needs to be maintained ongoing. The sports and leisure facilities are important in enhancing people's quality of life here in Medway, as they are in other places. And our improved facilities are not only going to be good for our residents, but they're also going to help those centres to go out and seek investment for events to take place at top quality centres. Like we remember in the park, I remember in Medway Park, the wheelchair rugby, and I'd love to see more things like that, international world sports, come to Medway. So having a decent centre all around is going to make it an attractive option for competitions to be run there. So that's going to be revenue that comes in from outside of our borough. Also, the savings made are the right thing to do, because those two centres, with that investment combined with the money that's been spent at the Strand and Who, shows our commitment, as you say, no centre left behind, but it shows our commitment to residents across the borough. So it can only be a good thing, I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luella. Simon.
Yeah, thanks, Vincent. Thank you very much, Nina, for the report, and to the team officers who put this together. It's really exciting, and to come in on time and under budget is quite a remarkable achievement, particularly with the rising costs of materials and all the labour costs and stuff in this day and age. It really is quite an amazing achievement, so it's to be praised. Colleagues have said quite a bit, but I just wanted to add in that, I mean, Harinder mentioned about the green credentials of this building, and it's a testament to what we can achieve if we do the right kind of thing and reduce our energy costs significantly across the board to keep the running of the buildings at a minimum, because we're just using the sunshine to power things, which is a nice way to look on Medway with the sun shining on it. Not today, perhaps. But I think also one of the things is the wider community impact. As we know, Cossington Park is one of our most important green spaces, and we're already investing 106 money there with a new tree nursery going in and development of allotments and stuff like that. So there's a lot happening around the site. It's not just isolated. And the exciting times coming ahead for Deangate out near Who where we're looking at developing new facilities out there as well. So there's a lot more to come, and this is just almost like, so not the beginning, but it's continuation. And the vital part of this is that by using that money to invest in our infrastructure, we no longer have to worry too much about the deterioration causing us problems. I'm reminded of a famous folk song, The Dimming of the Day, when this old house is falling down around our ears. Well, that's no longer the case, so it's good to see. Thank you.
Indeed. Alex.
Thanks, Vince. I wondered whether perhaps I should have declared a pecuniary interest as one of the premier members of the Medway Sports Centres, but if I did that, I'm certainly amongst many thousands and thousands of people who are currently enjoying what are absolutely first-class facilities, particularly at Cossington Park. A shout out to the staff there, and particularly to Louis for drawing up the gym programme, which has delivered the fine physical specimen which I put before you. But the facilities at Cossington Park are really inspiring for someone who perhaps isn't sure about taking the sort of fitness journey further, and I think that's been a fantastic addition to what we have. But actually, it's really important that is replicated across Medway. I was at Medway Park using the gym there this morning, because of course that's one of the fantastic benefits of a Medway Sport membership, that you're not just joining one gym, you're joining 4. You also have access to the Strand Lido during the summer. So it really is fantastic value for money, and if we are to encourage even more people to take up those memberships, to use the facilities, and to help us reduce the level of subsidy required to zero, then it's absolutely critical that people feel they have those facilities on their doorstep. And it speaks to what Simon was also saying about the environmental credentials of Cossington Park, but it adds environmental credentials if people in Strood, on that side of the river, in who don't feel that they have to travel to Cossington Park to experience the brand new facilities. I think that we're doing a good job of keeping up appearances at those other gyms, and I use all of them. But it really will be fantastic to have that level of proper investment, long-term investment, to bring them up to scratch. And I look forward to getting on some of the new tech as and when that's installed at the other gyms.
Thank you very much indeed, Alex. Before I come back to Nina, a few bits from my perspective. I think I remember vividly the conversation with Harinder, a private conversation around his vision of getting the subsidy down to 0. And I said, if you manage to do that, you are a pretty phenomenal politician. And we're on our way. And now you've handed that portfolio over to Nina. We're continuing that brilliant work. So thank you to both of you for that work you've done to date so far. Others have said it, but I absolutely would want to place on record my personal thanks, both to Bob, but Bob would be the first person to say it is a team effort. And we saw a great example of that yesterday. Nina and I had the privilege of visiting not only a brilliant sports facility, but an international dance festival happening right here in Medway. And Luella is right. I mean, we have, I think I was chatting to Paul, who's a member of Bob's team. We've got a number of different sports, some I think for the first time, carrying out national and international stuff happening here in Medway. And of course, that's a great privilege. And it's great to see, our facilities being shown on that national and international stage. It was great to press the BBC red button a few months back to watch some of the stuff happening. I think it was wheelchair rugby. I'm pretty sure it was. But of course, it's not just about the sport. If you've got 10,000 dancers coming to Medway, they're using our restaurants, they're visiting our cultural and leisure outlooks, they are staying in our hotels. I was told yesterday to get a hotel in Medway was almost impossible because we've got so many people here for that period of time. And they've been here for a number of years. They're extending their programme for 5 days next year. That is fantastic. So it's examples like that, which is not only meaning that those facilities are available to the 285,000 local residents, they're being used by national and international athletes and others. And that makes me incredibly proud. And the fact that we're now being able to invest more because that project came in under budget is something which I think shows once and for all on this area, across Medway, this council has got your back. We're making sure you've got facilities and they will continue to be at a standard which residents rightfully deserve. Nina, back to you.
Thank you all, my colleagues, and Vince as well. Couldn't have summed it up better than the previous portfolio holder sitting right beside me, actually. Yes, I do think all of the Cabinet needs to pay tribute where it's deserved, because it was Councillor Mahale's vision to actually bring the subsidies to zero, to see if we can work together with our officers to make sure that the sports centres and leisure facilities can become self-sustaining. And we have looked at the evidence that's available to us, and it does show that when you invest, there is a long-term return, which is why we are proposing this. And as Vince has rightly pointed out yesterday, it gave us, it was a very proud moment for all of us here in Medway to actually see over thousands of dancers, like, waltzing around in their glittery gowns and all that. But on the other hand, the world is actually watching Medway. Because the show was live streamed to over 5 million viewers across the world. So not only did we have like 64 different countries, dancers, like over 10,000 dancers over 4 days, but it is being live streamed and Medway is being put on the map out there. And we can only do this when we invest in our facilities and make sure that it is something that can deliver what the organizers also want from us. And full credit goes to the hardworking team members at Medway Park as well. And this is all about us investing in for the future of Medway and also bringing pride in place because, as Teresa has rightly pointed out, for us it is important that the whole of Medway feels proud of what we have in terms of, and it's great that our cabinet colleague is already a Premier member. Yeah, I would highly encourage everyone listening to this live stream to take it up as an annual subscription because it is such good value for money. And you have such brilliant access to all the state-of-the-art facilities across our different sports centres. But of course, like the report has highlighted, there are some major improvements that need to be done. And this is why I really welcome all the valuable contributions from across the table. Because, and for your support as well, because I do know that all of us are joined up in the same thinking that this is investing in our community's well-being and in our community's resources. And what I do know also about our officers is when the contracts go out for the new 2 sports centres, they will again be very closely monitored and reviewed so that it doesn't go over budget. And I will, of course, be having the updates and sharing with the colleagues as well. So on that note, I would really request the Cabinet to approve this proposal, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Nina. We managed to get through that whole debate without getting into the separate debate around whether it's Lido or Lido. One of us is right. Obviously, this is a recommendation again to Council, so are colleagues happy to agree to recommendation? Thank you very much. Let's move on to item 7, the Tenant Strategy 2024. Luella, over to you.
Thank you, Vince. So this tenancy strategy of 2024 replaces the one of 2018. Medway, along with other local authorities in England, has specific legal obligations regarding tenancy strategies. They're outlined in the Localism Act 2011. Medway has to have a tenancy strategy in place and has to review and update the strategy when significant changes are made to practice. Medway's previous strategy had a focus on flexible tenancies, which would potentially end after 5 years. There would then be a period of review and then tenancies would either come to an end or they would be continued. In practice, the ending of tenancies rarely happened and this mirrors the ongoing needs for tenants of social housing and also the community benefit of people investing in their neighbourhoods. The time officers spent on reviewing these tenancies could be better utilised in providing support for tenants in other ways. The updated tenancy strategy states that secure tenancies will now be the usual type and allow for flexible tenancies to be used in specific circumstances. For example, where there's significant antisocial behaviour. More broadly, it's seen as community cohesion, benefit to Medway housing neighbourhoods, not to have tenants wondering if they may not have a tenancy past 5 years. In terms of what's better for Medway tenants and Medway as a whole, secure tenancies give a better overall outcome and mirrors what has been happening in practice in Medway and for many other providers of social housing, in that there's been a move away from flexible tenancies and back to secure tenancies. I would ask Cabinet to note the comments of the Regen Overview and Scrutiny Committee as set out in Section 9, and I'm open to any comments or questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Luella. Any colleague? Teresa?
Yeah, thank you very much for bringing this forward to us, Luella, and to officers and everybody that have been involved. I think one of the things that it does show is our commitment to inclusivity. We want everybody, whatever their tenure is, to feel secure. And we're sending a message to other landlords, and indeed through the government, that that is an incredibly important part of the provision of housing. There's legislation going through, as I'm sure you'll know, about the abolition of no-fault evictions. And here we are in Medway, making sure that people have got a secure tenancy. And I'm very pleased, actually, to see in Section 8 that we've made provision for when things go wrong. And when somebody does revoke their entitlement to a secure tenancy, it is not the end of the road for them. They will be supported to return to getting a secure tenancy and have somebody working alongside them. So there aren't any punitive elements to this. All of the elements to it are positive about making sure that people feel secure, whatever their tenure, making sure that when things go wrong in their family, they will be supported to put them right, and helping to send a message, I hope, to all housing providers that this is the standard that we expect from them.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Can't see any other colleagues, so before I come back to you, Luella, a couple of bits. So from my perspective, I think this is a really positive step. And it goes, again, shows, you know, we're taking this issue seriously, not only as responsible for, you know, every family and individual having decent housing, but of course we are a landlord, and this shows that very clearly. And I'd want to put on record my thanks to you personally and the team, of course, who we've had that inspection since we last met as a cabinet. Obviously we await to see with great interest their conclusions, but whatever their conclusions, I'm really clear this is a service which is working hard every single day, and you as a portfolio holder taking over again in a similar fashion to the previous debate, but from the now MP for Gillingham and Raynham, Nashaba Khan, in an area which every single one of us, you know, wants to make a difference. And if you look around the room, if people haven't got a safe and secure home, it impacts on every other element, every other portfolio. So no pressure. But from my perspective, this is critical. So this is another positive step. And sometimes it is about those things which we can do, which don't necessarily cost taxpayers money, but shows very clearly we want to do the right thing. And as Teresa says, there are a number of other organisations who are moving in this similar direction, and that's the right thing as well. Back to you.
Thank you, Vince. Yes, I agree, and I agree completely, Teresa. Feeling insecure in your housing situation can have significant impacts on every aspect of your life, as every aspect of this cabinet, actually, in all the areas of the council. So security, this is so important for people to feel secure, first place home. So I'd ask you all to support it. I'd like to thank Mark and Chris, the officers, for the report, and just say that I'm proud that we're looking to give people in Medway secure tenancies as our normal practice. It's as it should be. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Is the recommendation as agreed? Thank you very much. That moves us on to item number 8, which sits with me. And this is, of course, another report I'm pleased to be receiving. We've seen frankly, without the level of lobbying we needed 6 months ago, which of course in Medway was led by my friend and colleague Tracy Coombs, we've seen the government extend the Household Support Fund for a further 6 months. So this report is primarily recognising that and giving the relevant delegated authority to myself and the Chief Operating Officer, Phil Watts, to ensure that we make the appropriate use of that, and importantly, don't send any money back. This is a much needed fund. I'm hopeful that within the next 6 months we'll see some progress on a number of areas here. This is, of course, a fund which was created actually because of COVID, but the issues which it deals with have been there long before we had a global pandemic. And many colleagues will recall, for example, it shouldn't need a Premiership footballer to get the previous government to realise you need to do something around holiday hunger for those most vulnerable children. So the scheme will effectively continue as has been the case previously. There aren't the specific restrictions there were necessarily at the start of this programme. Colleagues may recall that for some of the first tranches, there were specific requirements on us as a council to allocate certain percentages to certain groups within a community. We don't have that this time, but certainly the approach we'll take, which is some specific funding for free school meal eligible pupils during the school holidays through to the end of March, because that's when this funding stream concludes. And the continuation of the successful grant scheme. So that will be working with relevant partners, and I was really pleased to be with Teresa at the Food Partnership over the weekend. I'm sure she may say a little more about that, but again, this scheme is ensuring that those who are right at the heart of our community are able to deliver support in a way that perhaps a council can't always. You know, it's important to work with our not-for-profit colleagues wherever practically possible. And we'll continue to use the technology that we have to highlight some of those individuals who may be entitled to additional assistance. Some of that we've already invested in as well. So I'm really pleased to see this government not needing the level of lobbying that was needed just over 6 months ago and leaving it to pretty much the last minute. That is a different approach now, and I welcome that very much indeed. And let's say, I am hopeful, and we will continue to make the case that for the specific areas, and again, I think in particular the holiday hunger issue, it is one which I'm sure will continue to be looked at, and whether there's specifics within the budget at the end of this month, we will see. But whatever happens, rest assured that us as a cabinet, and I'm sure individuals will continue to make the argument strongly to whoever's in government that those vulnerable children and their families need the support at that most difficult time when there isn't the wraparound care that you get from a school. I'll pause at that point and happy to throw it open. I've got Teresa, then Tracy.
Thank you, Vince. And I want to pay tribute to Gemma Gilly, who's our head of benefits and financial welfare, and her team for really working hard to be the warm and friendly face of the council that people can come to when things are tough financially and find that they get a hand up, not just a hand out, and access to lots of other sources of help when you come along to see that team. And indeed to Katie Durkin, our Chief Financial Officer, for making this possible, because it hasn't been clear from the get-go how we would use this, and you know, things have had to go into place very, very quickly and continue to do that. And Katie, I think, has been very foresighted in thinking ahead of the next things that we need to do. So it's welcome, really welcome, to get this extension. Of course, I don't want there to have to be a household support fund. And I'm hopeful that with the government's plans for growth, their plans for strengthening welfare support so that people who are not working at the moment but need to return to work will be able to, and all of the work that we're doing to strengthen the economy will eliminate the need for this. But for the time being, we do need it, and we've got to use it as wisely as possible. And as part of that, I'm pleased to say that we're doing some work jointly with our MPs as well, on making sure that those people who might be entitled to claim pension credit are able to do so. I've been pleased to write a letter to over 400 people in Medway who we believe are entitled to pension credit but are not currently claiming. That has gone. There will be a special event on the 21st of October in the Pentagon from 10 till 2. So a bit of a plug there, and more of that on all of our media for anyone to come along who thinks they might be entitled to pension credit to get some help and support with claiming. And at that event, we will have information about the Household Support Fund. We will have friends from the voluntary sector there talking about what they can offer. And I don't want anyone who's watching or anyone who isn't watching but knows somebody who could benefit from this to think that we are going to have people cold and hungry in Medway for the winter. We are doing our very best to make sure that that doesn't happen. And it's a chilly and inclement day today, and I know that that puts fear into the heart of people on low incomes. And this is the event, and what we're doing with the Household Support Fund generally are our message to anybody, to people who live on their own, to families, that we are here to help. And you shouldn't be embarrassed about coming forward. You should come forward because these things are your rights. I'm looking forward to that event, and also looking forward, actually, to the information from the government that we heard at the Labour Party conference about the provision, which was an election pledge, of free breakfast for all primary school children. That will come. We're not quite sure how it's going to work, but we're hoping for more information. And of course, having a really good start, a healthy start to the day with a full tummy is the way to make sure that our children are achieving the very best. So we'll be working through this together with all of the things that we're talking about this evening with the event for pension credit. So, you know, I say to everyone, if you know somebody who can benefit from the Household Support Fund, who can benefit from claiming pension credit and they're not doing it yet, then send them along to the Finance and Welfare team, send them along to the event on the 21st. And I'm really pleased to say that all three of our MPs are offering support to people through their offices for this as well. And indeed, there was a special event at the Sunlight Centre with Nashaba Khan just a couple of weeks ago. More of those coming, but all three of the MPs' offices are offering support to people who need it. And that means, in many cases, them sending people our way. But that's absolutely the right thing to do.
Thank you very much indeed, Teresa. Once again, a true one Medway approach. I've got Tracy and then Alex.
Thank you very much. It'll come as no surprise that I'm delighted that this scheme has been extended through until the end of March next year, and without having to beg and ask for it as we had to previously. Previously, with the Conservative government, poverty has spiralled, particularly child poverty has become a huge problem and has increased absolutely massively. We don't want to be having to provide emergency support to people who find themselves in dire circumstances, whether they're on benefits or not. We don't want families to be having to use food banks, but it's the early days of this Labour government, and at the moment we are having to rely on these measures still, and I feel confident, as Teresa said, that we will move forward with this and that we will be in a better place in years to come. In the meantime, I'm very pleased that Medway residents who need extra support over the winter months will have it. I'm very pleased that children will be able to eat during the school holidays because their families will be provided with vouchers to help them with their food bills. Teresa rightly mentioned the free breakfast clubs that are going to be rolled out in every school. This Labour government will be making sure that every child goes to school having eaten a good breakfast. The early adopters are being asked to apply now for a pilot scheme that's starting in April, and we'll be writing to all schools in Medway encouraging them to put in their applications for this with a view to full rollout for September of next year. And we really welcome this as one of the steps that we'll be taking to make sure that we don't have children in poverty and we don't have children going hungry. In the meantime, this Household Support Fund will see us through the winter. So very pleased to see this coming forward.
Thank you very much indeed, Tracy. Alex.
Thanks, Vince. Just to draw people's attention to 5.5 in the report, where I think it's a really sobering figure there in the context of a lot of debate at the moment about the means testing of a once universal benefit worth £300 a year, to see that actually what it takes in a means-tested benefit to prevent a child from going hungry during the school holidays is £15. And I think that some of those who are most vociferous in their protestations about the means testing of a once universal benefit were absolutely silent at the loss of the universal benefit of child benefit. When that became a partially means tested benefit, we heard not a dicky bird from any of those people. In fact, mainly because they belonged to the party which was implementing such a measure that was targeting children, the most vulnerable families. So I'm really proud that we're able to continue to offer this support, because it really shouldn't come to this. And I think that those who have been bemoaning the loss of something that they perhaps didn't necessarily need should reflect on the requirement to concentrate our resources on those who really would slip through the cracks. Otherwise, it's not the difference between booking a few nights away in a B&B and not being able to do that this year because you haven't got a non-means tested benefit you didn't need. This is about children going hungry during the school holidays, and this is about a culture which has proliferated under the last government, where the only major growth industry was in food banks, which should absolutely shame us all, but in particular should shame those who treat that as something that is normal rather than something to be abhorred. So I'm really pleased that this is continuing. I pay tribute to the HAF team who have delivered incredible activities for children and also for the wider families as well, because the people who are perhaps the forgotten victims in all of this are the parents who are working and yet struggling to provide for the families. I can't think just how debilitating it must be to work and not be able to earn enough to put food on the table. So I'm really pleased that we have been able to do that, and as Tracy says, without the battle which was previously required.
Thank you very much. Teresa wants to come back in, and then we'll move to the final conclusion.
You helpfully reminded me, Vince, to do a little celebration for our food partnership event, which the annual, the fourth one, that we held at the weekend at Kent University, had really good attendance, including from one of our local farmers. And the real push in that was about sustainable food, and really a lot of interesting and very high commitment to making sure that we get sustainable, local, good food to as many people as possible who need it. We've already got a bronze award for sustainable food in Medway. We want to go higher and get silver and go to gold, and that takes a collective effort. But there are lots of people who haven't got access to that healthy, sustainable food, and we want to make sure that we work right across the community, including with our local farmers, as we heard on Saturday, to make sure that happens. So I came away from that feeling very positive and energised about the things that we're going to do in the food partnership this week. But some of the things that Tracy was saying about school, we've got people from the food partnership in our partnership with the Soil Association going into schools, teaching children about growing and cooking, teaching teachers how to teach children about growing and cooking, providing fantastic curriculum resources about all of this, so that having decent, sustainable food doesn't become a sort of middle-class thing where people go, wandering with a wicker basket around the market, although it's nice that people are able to do that, but becomes something that everybody can have and everybody can demand, that the food they eat, they know where it comes from, it's good food with health benefits, and they've got the resources and the skills and the access to be able to take advantage of it. So that's what the food partnership's about. I wanted to particularly send a message tonight to Harinder, our portfolio holder for business and the economy, because we need more buy-in from food businesses to join the sustainable food partnership, and we're going to have hopefully a special event targeting businesses to get them to join us. But of course, this is another way to grow the economy of Medway. If we can show that we're a sustainable provider of food, it will attract people here. We'll be doing different things, thinking about all the ways that food reaches into the economy. You know, food is love, and we've got to spread it around as much as possible in a good way. Not love everybody by having a McDonald's. Other hamburgers are available, but I prefer the ones that are made with really good meat and plenty of nutrition. So lots happening, all associated with making sure that families in Medway, particularly those who haven't got access to all of these good things, will get it, along with everybody else as well.
Thank you very much indeed, Teresa. Before we put the recommendations, I mean, just 3 or 4 things, and that's been a really helpful set of contributions, so I thank everybody around the table for that. On the final point that Teresa raised there, it's interesting that there's at least one charity in Medway, when they're preparing food and sharing that with people, not only do they put the calories, they'll put the carbon footprint as well. So that is something which lots of people are thinking about. So I think it's right to raise that in this debate tonight. For me, I wish the Household Support Fund didn't have to exist. On the 6th of September, we had World Food Bank Day, which colleagues over at the Trussell Trust site on Medway City Estate held an event which I was pleased to be at with fellow councillors, the Mayor, Lauren Edwards, obviously MP for that area, and others. And there was a universal cry of, this shouldn't exist. This event shouldn't exist. And it's one of those things where you go, it's brilliant that people have got that compassion and care and dedication and commitment to reach out a hand of friendship, a hand of solidarity when people are struggling. But my goodness, as Alex said earlier on, it's almost an industry, and we need to do everything we can, both here in Medway and across the country, to reduce that requirement. And one of the most concerning things, and it picks up on the point made earlier on, is the increasing level of people who are in work, having, in some cases, in work in 2 jobs, having to access the Trussell Trust Food Bank and others. Of course, there are other organisations in Medway who offer similar support. So it is right to say we as a council, we as a political administration, we will do everything we can in the nicest way to stop there being food banks in Medway, because there shouldn't have to be. But whilst they are there, whilst there is a requirement, my goodness, thank you very much to all those volunteers for Medway Food Bank and the similar organisations who work with the Holidays and Food Activity Programme through the Food Partnership and other parts of the system that we run collectively. And of course, many of those organisations will directly benefit from this additional 6-month extension because they will be carrying out some of that work for us. So really pleased, as colleagues have said, that there hasn't had to be the same struggle and fight for this as there was just over 6 months ago. I also recognise there are other similar funding streams that we've talked about here, stuff like the Rough Sleepers Initiative and others, which there is still clarification is needed. But this is a good starting point on that journey of those cliff edges which the previous government have left for the now new government to deal with. And again, I would finally, in moving the recommendations, put on record my thanks to Gemma Gilly and her team, as Teresa said earlier on. Fantastic, recognised at our staff internal awards. They've been put forward to the council-wide staff internal awards. And there's an absolute reason for that, because they are recognised, I think, across the council as leading the way in making sure that those families and individuals, many of whom, as referenced earlier on, have never had to access support before. And again, I send a message really loud and clear. If you know someone, an individual, a family, who is struggling, who perhaps don't know that this service is available, or perhaps you know that they won't want to access it, encourage them to do so. Look at the Medway Council website. Look at the cost of living plan, which again we've refreshed. That's what this administration is prioritising. We are making sure that, again, no one is left behind in Medway, and we'll keep working hard on that every single day. So with that, I'll move the recommendations in paragraph 1. Are those agreed? Thank you very much indeed. Let's then move on to the next item, item 9, Statement of Gambling Policy 25 to 28. Alex, over to you.
Thanks, Vince. I'll make an exception for this item and speak as little as possible before opening up to the floor. I would point out that I am the world's worst gambler. I was always a great disappointment to my late mother-in-law when we played cards after dinner, and I would always say, can we not just play for buttons? And, you know, she was furious at the idea that I wasn't prepared to put my money where my mouth was when it came to gambling. So maybe I'm not the best suited person to be presenting this report. But what we are seeking here is approval from members to submit this policy for approval by full council. So I will not try to summarise what is a pretty lengthy report, but obviously, again, in light of the previous item, to recognise some of the responsibilities we have towards vulnerable people in our community, often people who don't have money to lose, in terms of the way that we conduct gambling policy in Medway. But I would open it up to the floor, Vince.
Thank you very much. Alex, odds on that we've got some good speakers on this item. Moving to Teresa.
Yes, thank you. And I'm not a good gambler too. As a family who always did the pools when I was a kid, my old dad used to say, he'll never win, but he kept doing it. And as a person who didn't have a lot of money, that was a wise thing to say and to accept. And I think what we have to recognise about this, Alex, and why it's in your portfolio is it's about keeping people safe and keeping people who need protection from the ravages of gambling when it goes wrong in a position where they can feel secure and a bit less likely to get into trouble. Because after all, we're surrounded every evening on the television by people being encouraged to gamble, and in very clever ways. So, you know, I accept that it's part of wider society, but it is really important that this element of society is controlled. And Vince, you know, I pay tribute to you here as a very early campaigner on the things that were going wrong with fixed odds, betting machines, and all of that, you know, a history in opposition of actually, even then, making sure that Medway led the way on keeping people safe from excessive gambling. So it's good to have a local policy. I thank you very much, Alex, for bringing it forward. And I think, you know, we do have to bang the drum for this being a very important element of community safety, because when people get into trouble with gambling, they get into trouble with all sorts of other things as well. And like other items that we've seen tonight, the trouble that they get into reaches across all of our portfolios. And we want to prevent as many people as possible from getting into trouble and protect those who enjoy a flutter in an achievable way, I guess.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Simon?
Yeah, thanks, Vincent. Thanks, Alex, and thank you to the team who put this together, the report, because, like Teresa, I feel very strongly about this issue. In my own ward in Luton, you see it writ large in in many parts of the community there, and the consequences are absolutely horrible to watch, and there's not a lot you can do. And one of the issues I have with this, it's a shame that the consultation didn't reach that many. I think one response on it means maybe we should look at the consultation again. I would suggest, and I'm sure that would be the suggestion that this is a health issue is really good to see, because it is. And I think the other thing is about the definition of what we call vulnerable people. It talks about children and vulnerable people in a lot of detail, which is really great to see, and I can see how strongly that comes across in this. But defining what we mean by vulnerable people, I think it's people with addiction issues, it's people with money issues, it's people, all sorts of aspects of people's lives can lead them into the hope value that gambling can bring in, alongside possible mental health issues and stuff as well. So the vulnerability aspect needs clearer definition by far, and I think it's a job for government, and the lobbying that we've done in the past is something that we need to continue to do. So it's really good, but as a council, and I think this demonstrates it, we have a duty to protect people in that situation and make sure that they're kept from harm. And if one person in a family is gambling, then the whole family suffers, and that's something that we've got to be very conscious of going forward. So I welcome this report and the work that we need to do going forward on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zoe.
Yeah, agree with everything that you just said, Simon. And I think one of the things that seems to be happening is that the stakes are getting higher. So the rewards that people think that they can receive by gambling are so much greater, that there's so much more of a temptation. That I think there's a product called Omaze where you can buy a mansion or win a mansion by buying tickets that cost £100 a shot, and people who want to bring themselves out of poverty see that as a way forward. But of course, they're likely never to win the prize. So I do think it's really important that this issue is addressed.
Thank you, Zoe. Harinder?
Yeah, I'm afraid I side with Councillor Patterson's mother-in-law in that I always feel like, just like in local government, it's better when there's some money behind it. But having said that, I associate with every comment being made, and appreciate that taking a public health approach to gambling is the only way to tackle it. There's comments made, I think, by one of the commenters, GamCare, where they've mentioned perhaps using data to be able to sort of get a better picture of where the hotspots are. So seeing if we can ask the various sort of agencies that work around it, see if that can be shared. I think that's worth noting as a comment. That's a very good idea, and if that could be taken forward, that would be a very sensible approach. But also noting as well, as I'm sure agency workers are aware, that a lot of the problem behaviours are moving away from high street and moving away from postcodes, actually going online and on mobile phones. So that access and that instant sort of reward and sort of reward-seeking behaviour is much harder to stop. So that makes it that much more important that when agencies do come across sort of problem behaviours, that they address it quickly, because you might not catch it again. So it was a great report. So thank you for bringing it forward. Cheers.
Thank you very much, Harinder. Before I come back to Alex, can I firstly thank Teresa for her kind and generous words. As I said for a number of years, I'm not anti-gambling, but I am anti-problem gambling. And this policy, I think, our local policy, does as much as we can. And of course, there have been changes subsequently. And, you know, it was not right that somebody could spend £100 every 20 seconds. And as somebody who used to work for a well-known bookmakers called the crack cocaine of gambling, so that particular product is off our streets, and that's, of course, to be welcomed. But there's plenty of other products that are still on our high streets. And look, the comment that was made at ONS, I understand where that individual was coming from, but I think it's about what we can do and what's right for Medway. And that's not to say that we shouldn't potentially be lobbying as well, because, of course, and some of these are contentious issues, I get that, but there'll be lots of 7, 8, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds who will be walking around in a shirt that probably costs their family the best part of £100 that will have a gambling organisation on the front of it. And they'll be going to play football or other sports, but predominantly football, actually, with others who will be wearing a gambling company on their chest. I don't think that's acceptable. I think that's wrong. And I think one of the things we can say from this chamber tonight is we don't have the ability to change that law, but we can certainly make the argument loud and clear that our 63,000 children shouldn't be subject to gambling advertising. I'm really clear on that. And I know other colleagues have said that to me elsewhere before. So that's not something we can include in our gambling policy, but it's something we can say very clearly. And I know colleagues across the chamber, actually, and I recognise the work of the former MP for Chatham and Aylesford in this as well, making sure that that voice from a parliamentary perspective was clear on the crack cocaine of gambling. So I do think this is a policy. It's right for us to look at what is within our sphere of influence, but I'm very comfortable with us either individually or collectively telling this industry, and it's not just this industry, there's a separate industry in the world of gaming where actually gambling is going into those quarters as well, with loot boxes and stuff like that. I don't claim to be an expert on those things, but what I do know is other people who are experts are saying those things are damaging our vulnerable young children. So part of the challenge is, as a local authority, we can only manage what is within our domain, but I recognise in this area of discussion, there are things which are not even probably within the gift of the UK government alone, in some cases, which will have an impact particularly on our vulnerable people and particularly on our, I say, 63,000 children in Medway. So I welcome the work that's gone into this. I hope it gets strong support at council, and therefore I'm very happy to support this, and I'm sure there'll be a strong debate on this when we get to full council later in the month. Alex, back to you.
Thanks, Vincent, and thanks to colleagues for bringing out what I think are very important issues around this. As you say, Vince, it's, there's a limit to our powers on this at a time when the problem appears to be moving, if it hasn't already significantly moved, online. But I suppose the old environmental adage is think global, act local, and I think that applies here. You know, we're here on the day after the very last coal-fired power station shut up shop for good in this country, and that didn't happen overnight. That happened as the result of someone's foresight back in 2008 in setting those carbon targets. So to sort of draw that analogy, I think that we have a role to play, and there's, you know, that's not to say that I'm not aware that some of the problems of gambling are therefore hidden from view. It's the same with the licensing of alcohol. Sometimes the problem drinking, or the greatest problem drinking, is not taking place in licensed premises. It's taking place off license and behind closed doors. And you know, there are ways to tackle that. And obviously, when it comes to gambling policy, that's the same approach we have to take here. We have to do what we can do, and to understand that the vulnerabilities are not just in the people who are having a flutter, or perhaps worse than that, but it's actually the families that are impacted when that flutter becomes a problematic level of gambling. So I look forward, as Vince says, to the debate at full council, but I'm confident that, such as our powers are, that we are on the right tracks here. So I move the recommendation.
Thank you very much indeed, Alex. Are the recommendations agreed? Thank you. Let's move on then to item 10. We've got 3 gateway items, so we'll move to the first one on those, which is over to Teresa.
Yeah, thank you, Vince, and thank you, everybody. When we've discussed this before, it was in the spirit of a really good event that was led by Graham Thomas, the programme lead for community-based services, having a pre-procurement meeting with anybody who wanted to come along to talk about our ambitions in Medway for community equipment. We've enjoyed a good service, and we want to make sure that we secure a good service for the future. This is a fast-moving area of our work in that golden thread of prevention and keeping people independent, and it reaches right across the generations. People benefit from community equipment from the day they are born, some of them, if they're born with more profound disabilities. Others benefit later in life as they get older and their needs change, And there, but for the grace go, all of us, if we fall off a ladder tomorrow and find that we're in a difficult situation because we've had an accident. So this is a service that can affect any family at any time and has enormous reach across our community. What is happening here, and you'll see another approach in the next item, is that our teams are trying to modernise procurement so that procurement keeps pace with what's happening in the service that we're trying to make sure we get the best value for Medway. In this case, we are asking for a longer period of time for the contracts, a 5-year period with the possibility of extending for 2 years, because this area is moving so quickly. When new technology comes on stream, we need to use it and test it and evaluate it before we decide whether it's something that we want to have in our community, keeping people independent for longer. And if we procure for shorter periods of time, it would mean that the provider doesn't have the opportunity to do that. With all of the new technologies, and people have heard me talk about this before, the modern assistive technologies that help keep people independent, it isn't just the provision of the technology to do that. There's a huge issue and a growing issue, and we'll need to work with government on this, about the compatibility of the technology in people's homes to take advantage of the new technology. So there might be a fantastic piece of kit that can keep somebody independent and that carers can use and the NHS can use to monitor them. But if the person who that kit is intended for hasn't got compatible Wi-Fi, indeed sometimes, and increasingly so, compatible hardwired equipment in their home to take advantage and be able to use it to themselves and respond, then there isn't any point in having it in the first place. So we need to be able to test all of this equipment in that sort of way. Got a new piece of equipment for somebody, is their home compatible with using it? And this has got reaches right into the local plan, what we want from developers for lifetime housing. It reaches into our partners in the NHS, with us in social care, and indeed with us in schools where we've got disabled children with special needs who have this type of equipment to make them live the best life that they can. So it's an incredibly important procurement, done in a different way, starting a big conversation at first to talk about what we want and indeed talk about how providers might collaborate and put in bids together. That has already happened, and that was a very fruitful discussion. It's got massive economic potential because the design of this is moving all of the time, and our university is getting involved in medical design, in medical, all of the things that happen in the universities with simulation and robotics. I was talking to the chair of Medway Hospital at a meeting today, and he was saying he'd just watched the first fully robotic procedure removing a tumour from somebody at Medway Hospital. So all of these things are connected together, and we've got to make sure that when we procure contracts, we put the providers in a position to be able to take advantage of what's happening, so that our community and all of the people in it have got opportunity for exciting jobs and new things, and in the case of community equipment, in an area where you can feel very good about the work that you've done because you're helping somebody stay independent for longer, helping somebody who wouldn't otherwise be able to do the things that round the table we take for granted actually do them. So it's a really important contract. If you are wondering why there's got to be an annual uplift, that's because the cost is rising, and the report explains all of the things that have got in the way of this. Disruptions in supplies, war, conflict, arguments on an international scale over the procurement of materials. So if we don't put the provider in a position to be able to be competitive in the future with an annual uplift that goes in line with what's happening elsewhere, then they won't be able to deliver a good service to our community. And finally, there's a huge element here of climate protection. We expect the equipment to be recycled, and actually our existing providers do that with great aplomb and commitment, and we've got help in the voluntary sector from that. We expect it to be environmentally, to have as low a carbon footprint as possible when it's actually being produced, and as far as we can, we want repairs to be done in-house to make sure that people get the equipment back quickly. So it's complicated procurement. It's a different way of procuring because we're asking for a longer period of time and a guarantee of an annual uplift. But I hope the detail in the report and what I've said tonight convinces everybody that this is something that we need to support and allow the procurement to go ahead on this basis.
Thank you very much indeed, Teresa. Luella, please.
Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Vince. I agree the service is so important to so many, and as the report highlights, the cost of living crisis has affected so many people's ability to self-fund purchasing even the most basic equipment. So this, of course, adds to the pressures that we're facing because the need is growing. And there's a new technology that Teresa refers to, but there's also the simple support items that can be vital. I found this out recently that in 2023, in Medway, 565 raised toilet seats were loaned out to residents. Now, you wouldn't even think of it, but they can be so vital. So the need is just going to keep growing with an ageing population, and it's not just the elderly that require them. The need is still there. So this service will be a loan, like the loan service, as you mentioned. So I would support that. I'd urge as many people as possible who may have equipment that they no longer need or use because they've moved on to something else, for whatever reason, to return it so that they can help others in our community. It can be tidied up, rehashed, those stoppers put on the bottom again, those sort of things. Ferals, that's right, that's the word. Collections can be booked via the council website. Found that as well. That's all, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Luella. Thanks for getting my favourite word in so I don't have to. Nina, please.
Thank you. This report is really helpful in terms of its focus on preventative approach. I think we owe it to the patients to make sure that as far as possible as council we try to promote independence and dignity for patients. And when there is a set of technology available, then to make full use of it wherever possible. And I do like the emphasis also on recycling and reusing equipment, as Luella has also pointed out, because yes, some of the equipments are of high value, but if it can be reused, and it's great that it is already happening. So the other thing that I also wanted to focus on is how this report also emphasizes on the systemic approach in terms of acknowledging that patient needs can be complex and varied as well, but being flexible in terms of how we pick appropriate treatment plan and care service plan for patients where it's needed through procurement of appropriate equipment, all aimed at promoting better quality of life for our residents. So I would really welcome that. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Nina. I can't see any other colleagues, so before I go back to Teresa, certainly right to have that longer contract period. I think if you are asking individuals, individual organisations or collaborative approaches to invest in particularly new technology, having in some cases, which some procurements can be 18 months or 2 years before they then start thinking about the re-procurement, organisations are going to rightly go, well, that's a bit of a risk for us. So having effectively a 5-year plus 2-year, or 5-year plus 4 years, effectively 2 further 24-month extensions, I think will give those organisations confidence that Medway is serious about working with partners into the long term. This is not about short-term fixes, and this stuff matters, as Luella rightfully says. This stuff matters to some of our most vulnerable residents. So making sure that they've got the best possible equipment available to them, ensuring rightfully where it's loan equipment that comes back to us as well. That's important. Every piece of equipment belongs to all of us ultimately, so we need to make sure that we are reducing the additional requirements by reusing or where appropriate recycling to use for other equipment moving forward, and ensuring that those companies can work with us in a co-production way. looking at some of these new technologies, which there are probably things which don't even exist that by the end of this 9-year period that we're talking about tonight could well be making a huge difference to Medway residents. So it is right and appropriate to take that period, and we can see from the table in 2.8, we're not the only ones thinking this. It is the right approach, I think, for investments of this nature. So very, very supportive of this, and I look forward, actually, to seeing who comes forward, and in particular, those collaborations which probably might be organisations that hadn't thought of working together, and if we as a council can again encourage in that kind of one Medway approach of saying, actually, we work better when we work together, that's got to be a good thing for taxpayers, but ultimately, more importantly, those individuals who are receiving those facilities, equipment and support at their most vulnerable time. Back to you.
Thank you for your support, everybody. And just to pick up something, Nina, that you said, yes, there's a critical piece of training to do here, because we want our staff in social care to feel confident about recommending some of the things that are coming forward as part of care packages. And look, everybody, whether it's the tiniest ferrule to make a pair of crutches work properly, you say feral, I say ferrule, I'm going on the phonic bit, or a hugely complex piece of equipment that allows a child to stand who otherwise wouldn't be able to and costs tens of thousands of pounds. The Community Equipment Service has got to work at both ends and supply all of those things and keep them going and do it in the most sustainable way possible. So, you know, we're looking to have a service that can answer all of those needs and do so in a positive way and look forward. So that's what the extension of the contract's about. That's what the built-in annual uplift is about. It's about having, for the provider, whoever comes forward and wins the procurement, to have confidence that they can make the best use of the contract and give people in Medway the best service. So with that, I commend the report to you.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Is the recommendation agreed? Thank you very much. That moves us on to the following item, item 11. Teresa, back to you.
And I think this is a very different contract, but it's a way to look at the agility of procurement, because in the case of this contract, we're asking that we make a direct award to the existing provider. And there should be space for doing that as well. If a provider is doing well, if they are meeting all of their key performance indicators, if they've achieved stability in a very important area of work, then they should be permitted to have a direct award of that contract without a competitive process. And our commissioning, and I hope the commissioning of our partners, particularly our NHS partners, should be agile and open and inclusive enough and innovative enough to look across the different elements of procurement and decide on the one that fits the service best. You know, sometimes, like the one we've had before, a competitive process is the best process. Sometimes a direct award is the best process. And this incredibly important item, the Integrated Sexual Health Service, which is about keeping our population healthy and maintaining services that are working well at the moment and developing them and making sure that they can go forward. We want to make a direct award. So there's lots of detail in the report about why that is so, but I think it's interesting tonight to contrast the two gateway procurements and understand why we need to have that agility and creativity within our own procurement process to make the right decision for the right service at the right time.
Thank you very much indeed, Teresa. And I would wholeheartedly support that. It isn't necessarily a one-size-fits-all when it comes to procurement. We've got to have the relevant frameworks for the relevant contracts, and indeed recognising, you know, specifically where good services continue to be delivered for a number of years. Any colleague on this matter? No? Nina, please, yes.
Once again, I welcome this report, especially working in child safeguarding. I really like the emphasis on the services for young people as well as part of the procurement, and also the contextual safeguarding, because it does mean that young people and vulnerable adults will be safeguarded in all aspects of their lives, not just sexual health. So I would welcome that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. That's very helpful. and I agree with you on that. If there's nobody else, Teresa, back to you for any final comments.
Thank you for that comment, Nina. And you can see from the report that in a service like this, which is a sensitive service that reaches, again, across all ages, actually, and has to be incredibly inclusive, particularly when we've got new communities coming forward who may have different cultural traditions that impact on the way that this service is delivered, and indeed different health problems and issues that they bring with them that the service has to accommodate. So continuity and stability is very important. And as you've pointed out, Nina, the safeguarding element of this service is critical too. So I welcome everybody's support, and as I say, I think it is really important to recognise that our procurement teams are behaving in a way which shows their determination to get the right size at the right time for the right service and avoid one-size-fits-all competition for its own sake. You know, in fact, we're moving into a situation where I think it will make us very attractive to providers of all the services that we want to procure because we're offering that type of procurement.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Is the recommendation agreed? Thank you. Before we move to the next item, I just want to clarify the kind of mechanics of the next bits of the meeting. Item 12 has an exempt appendix, but no one has indicated that they wish to speak to that. So I'm intending that we take item 12 as an open item. The whole of agenda item 14 is on an exempt appendix. So therefore, we can't even move the item without going into closed session. That, as colleagues will know, that is incredibly rare for this administration. We always want to be open and transparent, but in this very rare occasion, I will have to move effectively item 13, which will be closing the meeting to the press and public. Because item 14 is the last item, that will be the conclusion of the live stream. And then we will clear the Chamber of Press and Public, and then we'll debate item 14. But I say we can't even start the debate on that because the whole item is on an exempt appendix, or an exempt item, effectively. We can't even start that without going into closed session, so we will have to do that. But for item 12, obviously I'd ask colleagues not to stray into the exempt appendix, but I'll hand over to Simon to start the Gateway 4 item we have on organic waste disposal contract extension.
Thanks very much, Vince. Yeah, I was going to mention the blue paper aspect of this item, but that's about finance and such like in relation to this, which is an ongoing contract. Just to bring members up to speed on this, this is about the extension of a contract with Country Star Recycling. They awarded the contract back in 2010 for 15 years, so it runs out next year, but it does have an opportunity to extend it for a further 5 years based upon circumstances. So that's basically what this report is about, asking colleagues support for that extension. So basically, Country Star have provided an excellent service. If you look at paragraph 4.6, and the table there shows how good they have operated over that 10 years in delivery of this service. The service being the recycling of our organic waste material. So it's collected by Norse in the brown bins, taken to the processing centre where Veolia operate, and then Country Star take it on from there and recycle it. That's food waste and garden waste, which is collected. The idea to extend this is partly because they have performed extremely well, so there's no need to go out to procurement from that basis at this time, and procurement is a complex and expensive process, but also in light of the fact that we are now going into this period of waste strategy production. And whilst we do the waste strategy work, which covers everything, we're replacing our RCVs starting next year, we're looking for a new depot, we're looking to recycle much more effectively, all those aspects about waste management going forward. And in particular, in relation to this item, there's some significant changes being made by government on the Environment Act regarding organic waste anyway and how it's collected and used. So there are some major sort of things going on primarily around our waste strategy plans that mean extending this makes it much easier to operate with somebody who's good at what they're doing and has delivered for us for 10 years. So that's really what the principle behind this item is. They have provided some social value. The research that's been done into the recycling of compostable packaging has been very valuable at a national level, so that's something else they've been doing in terms of the social value of the work they've done for us as well. So there's 4 options to choose from, and it's option 4 as laid out in paragraph 5 that we would like people to go for. I think that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. Looking for any colleague on this? I mean, I think it's helpful to be following on from the previous item. It shows, again, we are taking a dynamic approach, looking at the individual circumstances, making sure the service is fit for purpose, which actually in both these cases, they absolutely are. And because if they weren't, of course, this would be the opportunity to go thanks, but no thanks. And from a timing perspective of that wider conversation around a waste strategy, actually this is a helpful timescale because it means we won't have a procurement process going on whilst we're doing the very work to look at how we move forward well into the future. So I certainly will be supporting this. Luella, please.
I also will be supporting the choice of option 4 on the simple basis that they're meeting 100% of every sort of target, every criteria. So why change it? That's all.
Thank you. I agree. I can't see anybody else, so if there's nothing else, Simon, back to you.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thank you, colleagues. Just a couple of things, really. Just a huge thank you to Ruth DeLue and to Ian Gilmore and the team behind this work. Doing really marvellous work. One of the things, quite an old saying, is you always have to take out the rubbish in utopia. Well, Medway is not far off utopia, but we still have to sort the rubbish out. So we have to continue the service whilst we make changes, and that's what really this helps us do. We are making changes to improve the service, to make it much more streamlined, to decarbonise it, and to do all the things, increase the recycling, all those things we want to bring about change. But at the same time, week on week, we still have to collect the rubbish. So that will continue. So thank you very much, colleagues.
Thank you very much, Simon. Is the recommendation agreed? Agreed. Thank you. That then moves us to item 13, which I'll formally move. On recommendation, exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. We'll take a 2-minute adjournment while we just check the live stream is off and let those who are not able to be here not be here. And for those on the live stream, thank you very much. That will conclude tonight's live stream.